Hello everybody, Steve Griffiths here, developer of the MTPredictor software program. In this MTPredictor video I'd like to look at a Forex chart and show how we build the MTPredictor analysis up from different time frames. But before we start, we have to have a look at our risk disclaimer and just remind you that all examples in these videos should be considered as hypothetical. No trades were taken, they're just shown for illustration and training purposes only. There's a risk of loss in trading and investing. I'll say that another way. All professional traders know, understand, and more importantly accept that losses can and will and do unfold when trading. That's very important to understand. All trade decisions are your own sole responsibility. Right, let's come down and have a look at the US dollar, Canadian dollar. So let's start on a higher time frame. Let's look at a daily chart. Now on this I want to show how we go back to the prior pivot. You can see here's a swing up, here's a prior pivot low. Let's right mouse click here, do decision point, and this is an area for potential support. You can see the market hasn't quite reached that yet. So on the higher time frame, this would be an area for potential support. We now go down to a slightly shorter time frame, which is the 4-hourly chart, and you can see there was a trade set up. We're actually discussing this in today's MTPredictor training webinar on the 4-hourly chart, where we had a TS3 sell on a red MTP trend. In other words, the MTP trend on the 4 hours down, and can you see how we hadn't reached, in other words, we had not reached our higher time frame or daily support, therefore the large degree trend was down. So we had a look at this and let's place the analysis on the red sell bar, and we said this was a potential good trade to be in. You can see we haven't reached the first target there. That's one reason why I wanted to do the video today, to show a trade that could be potentially in the process of unfolding. So we haven't got to this target here. But can you see how the higher time frame and the shorter time frame both coincided and the picture looked nice and clear? Let's now take it down yet another time frame. So I want to leave this big decision point on there, the daily decision point. I want to go back to this pivot here, place a DP on, and can you see how our TS3 sell was at resistance on the 4-hourly chart? If we now go down yet another time frame onto the 1-hourly chart, here we have the 240 minute or the 4-hour resistance. Can you see that? There's the 4-hourly resistance there. Here's the initial decline down. Here's the initial correction, which unfolds an ABC into a potential TS1 HG or Holy Grail trade setup. Let's right mouse click over the red sell bar, place analysis, and here you can see we have a potential Holy Grail trade setup on the 1-hourly chart, where this resistance was coming off the 4-hourly chart, and yet again the MTP trend was red, largely trend was down. Again, the target is in the higher time frame daily support zone, so this again could be a good trade to take. Again, we haven't reached the first target, so it would be interesting to see whether over the next day or so the US dollar, Canadian dollar continues to decline and reaches this particular trade setup here. So this is why I wanted to do this video, to show you how you build up analysis on multiple time frames, where you start at the higher time frame. You place your areas of support and resistance on the higher time frame. You then go down to the shorter time frame to get your trade setups that are in the direction of that larger degree trend, and also are in our MTP trend color coded indicator. So here the large degree trend was down on the 4-hourly chart. So if you're trading the 4-hourly chart, you would have had a short trade here into your daily support zone. If you are trading the slightly shorter time frame, in other words, let's just take that off to avoid confusion, and put that on down there. If you are trading the 1-hourly chart and you are using your 4-hour for support and resistance, I'll just place the support and resistance zones on. Here is the resistance. Here's our support. You can see taken off that pivot low there. So the large degree trend was down from your resistance into support, and then when you went down to the lower time frame again, which would be the 1-hourly chart, here's your Holy Grail TS1 sell. Here's your target, which again is in and around or just ever so slightly below your 4-hourly support zone. But the point being is this sell setup here was in the direction of the 4-hourly down trend, in other words in the direction of the large degree downtrend. MTP trend on this 1-hourly chart was down as well. So it's an example of two particular trade setups unfolding. On the 1-hourly chart, here's the sell setup. We'll see if it reaches the target. And then also on the 4-hourly chart, there's the sell setup and the large degree trend down, and there's your target down there as well. So a couple of trades that are in the process of unfolding on the US dollar, Canadian dollar on the 4-hourly chart and the 1-hourly chart, both in the same direction as their respective higher time frame or larger degree trends. So you can see over the next couple of days whether this market continues to decline and whether we reach these targets here. But I wanted to do this video just to show how you start on the higher time frame chart and then come down when the picture is clear to then uncover your trade setups on the lower time frame. Also remind you that even though these trades are in the process of unfolding, that losses can and do unfold, and obviously this is what I looked at in the last video where we looked at some losing trades. So this one I wanted to look at some trades that are in the process of unfolding.